Hello and welcome. It's 8 o'clock and we will be starting. I am your host, Christopher Carter, the CEO and founder of GlobalComix. Today, we're going to be looking at a demonstration of what the GlobalComix platform is like, what it's capable of, and why it's relevant to people who are creating and publishing comics. GlobalComix serves multiple masters, and we will try to capture a little bit of how it applies for creators, publishers, as well as readers. There's a lot for me to go through in this demonstration. So I'm going to do my best to try and get everything done within inside of 30 minutes. If I don't, please feel free to ask me more during the Q&A session later. As this demonstration will be a little bit of an interactive demonstration, if you don't already have an account on GlobalComix, I would recommend and welcome everyone to create an account so that you can participate in the demo in real time, together with myself and Eric and Gamal are doing the presentation. All right. So the first thing that you need to do to use GlobalComix is open globalcomix.com in your browser. As you are a creator or publisher tuning into this demo, the section that we're going to be looking at is the publishing section. In order to go there, simply click the publish button in the top navigation to open the Become a Publisher page. First thing that you'll notice is it's got a lot of information about what GlobalComix offers. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading through what this is now. You can do that on your own separately. First thing I'm going to do, though, is create a user account. See that there's 3 fields that it's asking me for: a username, an email address, and a password. The username field is something that is akin to a Twitter username. It is your personal account username, not the identity that you'll be publishing your comics or content on GlobalComix with. You'll be setting that up right after. So I'm going to go ahead and create an account right here. So entering in my account username, my email address, and I'm creating a password. Having done this, it will send me a nice little email with an activation link so that I can activate my account. See this little reminder that is over here. I open up my email inbox, and it should be here any minute. Sometimes it might take up to a minute or so before this shows up. I'll click this resend, just in case. Here we go. So what I'm going to do now is activate my account, and off we go. I'm no longer being reminded that I need to activate, and I'm presented with a new little form here. This is the Start Publishing page for creators and publishers. And the first thing you'll want to do is create your brand identity. Your brand identity can be your personal name, it can be your pen name, it can be a nickname if you are a creator. It can be the name of your organization or the name of your publishing entity if you are a publisher. For the sake of this demonstration, we're going to pretend that we are a publisher, and we're going to go through what that means. So I'm going to create my nice little name here, and we'll call it Webinar Demo Publisher. Next thing I'll have to choose is a primary publishing language. Because GlobalComix, unlike most other publishing platforms, offers the ability to publish in multiple languages, this is the primary one, which is what the default for your publisher profile looks like and what the default when you create comics will be. You can always change this later. The identity that I choose is publisher. So I'm going to go ahead and create this page. Fantastic. All right. At this point, the page is being created. And if you were to go and look at the URL in the public, this is what it would look like. I'm going to put this in the chat for those of you that want to follow along. If you've created an account on GlobalComix at this time, I recommend that you hit follow on this particular page. The reason for that is you'll be getting notifications throughout the demonstration in real time with information about the actions that we're taking here. You'll also notice that the profile looks rather empty. So the first thing that I'll want to do is upload an avatar over here and a banner image covering the background, making it a little bit more personalized. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my avatar picture. Get this nice little cropper thing. I can kind of move it around, make sure that fits. I'm going to upload that. And I'm going to choose my banner. It's the same kind of interface as with your avatar. It's just a different aspect ratio. So I'm going to choose this little profile banner image that I found off of Google in preparation for this demonstration. So what I'm going to do here is I kind of want this over on the right-hand side, and I feel like this kind of makes it nice and personalized for me. Upload that, and you'll notice that it's now showing up in the background of my profile. Instantly, you'll see that it has a little bit more personality and flair. The next thing you might see here is this box that's asking me, what am I working on? This is kind of like your Facebook or Twitter status updates. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a little thing. The status updates that I post to my Facebook profile actually show up in people's home feeds. So next step here is for me to go in and look at the settings. You'll see that there's an empty about description here. I have no comics, I have no elsewhere. So we're going to go into the administration section for this creator or this publisher that I created. I can either click on this button over here, or regardless of where I am on the site, I can open up my account menu and look at the publisher page settings. So I can click in here and end up in the configuration. I can go ahead and do that. Here I can write a little about me bio, so we're going to do that. Save that, and I'm going to input my Twitter username. So when I go ahead and do all of this, if I reload this page, you'll see now that my Twitter is linked to my profile, and I have a nice little about me. Next thing that I want to do is set up my tracking information. Because I'm going to be publishing comics, that GlobalComix allows you to actually get information about the readers in various different ways through our internal analytics as well as through Google. You'll notice that it has this nice little Google Analytics tracking ID field. And what that essentially is you copy over an ID from a standardized Google Analytics setup. Going through and setting all of that up is something that you can look up online. It's fairly straightforward, looking at analytics.google.com. And what you'll want to copy over is the property ID, the tracking ID. So I'm going to copy this guy over here. Copy that text and put this back in this little section. What that essentially does is for all the readers that look at your publisher profile or your comics profile or are reading any of your comics online, we'll automatically be sending the tracking information to Google Analytics. So you can see using Google's tools as well as our own, the acquisition information and the real time and who's looking at what and sessions and bounce rates. All of these things that you might be familiar with if you have a website, a blog, or any other platform that you're actually working with. With all of this set up, the next thing that I want to look at is, because I'm actually a publisher, so there might be more than just me. Unlike most other publishing setups in the comics space, GlobalComix allows you to have multiple accounts manage your brand pages. And that comes fully fledged with multiple different roles and different permissions, customizable permissions for each role. Now, in this case, I'm going to add one of my own separate accounts as a content manager. You'll notice that the default roles in here are administrator and finance admin, content manager, analyst, and guest. And they all have different permissions. What those permissions are, I'll show you in a moment. go ahead here and add myself. Now we can see that we have the primary owner here and we have a separate member, which means that this other account actually has access into our publisher page. Depending on the role, they have different permissions. So if I look at the permissions for a content manager, you'll see the various different sections. You can hover these and get an understanding of what they mean. There's 4 access levels, ranging from none, view, edit, and administer. And depending on what the setting is and what the access level you grant a role, people will have access to do different things or not have access to do certain things. This can be particularly useful if you have people that you want to have help you with publishing comics, but you don't want them to be able to change your finance settings or change your payout information or claim your revenue or any of that stuff. So you can fully secure it for multiple people without having to share your account username and password. The roles have nice little descriptions, and you can kind of figure out what they do simply by reading what's in here. Next step that we want to look at is the revenue settings part. So in this case, I could choose that my profile is going to accept donations. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say that my monthly goal is $300. If I check this off and save, what will actually happen is here on my public profile page, there's a nice little make a donation button and a donation goal. This is particularly useful for creators that want to engage with their community and engage with their fans, but aren't really ready yet to put a paywall up in front of their content. Paid content is something that we're going to be looking at next. So I'm going to go back into this administration section and take us back into the identity over here. Everything is nice and set up. And we're going to go into the comics section. Next step here is to create a new title. When I do that, I get to choose between a type, comic, graphic novel, or manga. We may have more in the future, but these seem to be the general trend of what people publish under. We're going to call this particular comic, webinar comic, and we'll make the genre education because, well, this is an education piece. Make this particular comic a paid comic. You can change this, of course, in the future, but this just simply helps you get everything set up with a default without having to do a couple of extra steps in order to publish quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. We have now landed on the administration section for the comic named Webinar Comic. You'll notice a couple of different things. It has no cover page yet, which there's this nice little alert that is telling us. And I actually need to create a release in order to upload and publish comics. On GlobalComix, a release is what you would consider a bundle of pages, also known as a chapter, an issue, a volume, or whatever it might be. Each release can have one page or multiple. There's no limit on the amount of pages that you can publish simultaneously. And releases are generally used in order to bundle things out, whether it's 1, 2, or 4 or 5, for specific releases, announcements, etc. Next thing you'll notice is that there's some configuration here that hasn't been set up for the comic. So we're going to quickly go through and define what a theme is, which is somewhat like a secondary genre. In this case, we'll talk about it's about families and pets, and we'll say it's about computers and video games, and maybe some monsters. Sounds great for this particular comic. Time and era is a way of categorizing your title for relevance to Earth timeline history, which means if you are doing historic comics or you are doing things about specific warlords or someone in time, this would be a great way for people that are particularly interested in that type of stuff to discover your content, discover your comic. In this case, we're going to say that the story takes place somewhere between 1990 until present day. Audience that it's applied for, kids, teenagers, and adults. All good. And there's no advisory flags. This comic contains no nudity, no graphic violence, drug usage, obscene language, or sexual content. So we're good to go. since the comic is being created, you see this link here that says go to page. This comic page over here is the public profile for the comic title itself. You'll notice it's very empty, although it does contain the information that we just configured. I'm going to share this link with you all in the chat so that you can come in here and take a look as we go along. My next step here, of course, is because it's empty, I want to upload a cover page. And much like when I was setting up the publisher profile, I want to set a little banner for this one too. So I'm going to choose update and I'll choose my files. In this case, we have a nice little picture here. Don't worry if the files that you have aren't the right aspect ratio. It gives you a nice little cropper tool so that you can make it fit in the way that you best want without needing to jump into an image application or anything like that. The cover page is set up. I'm going to update the banner background up here too. This is another nice little piece that I found off of Google in preparation for this demonstration. So what I want to do is I kind of want to take a little bit of the skyline and a little bit of the comic like this. Try not to get any of the text. That looks good. And we're good. Now the page has a little bit more flair and it looks better. So our next step is, of course, let's get the release and the comic out. That is pretty straightforward. In order to do that, you go into your comic administration here, and you simply click this Create New Release button. It brings you into a window that is somewhat similar. It has, the release has a title, an optional subscription or a synopsis, and a couple of different settings. You'll notice that it is not yet published, and it actually tells you that you can upload any image files, zip files, PDF files, etc. What I'm going to do for this is simply take the zip file that I've zipped up these 6 images here, Bungie, S1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I'm going to take the zip and drag it onto this box. And what's happening in the background here is we're taking the zip file, extracting all of the images in alphabetic order, and uploading each image one by one to the server. On the server side, we're taking the original file that's uploaded and resizing it into 3 different versions. Thumbnail that you see here, a desktop version and a mobile version, as well as storing the original. What this actually means is that even if you have extremely large image files, say 15 megabytes, 50 megabytes, whatever that might be, since there's no cap on the upload, you can safely upload your high resolution work, and we'll make sure that the highest quality, lowest file size version is always shared with your reader, meaning that you are optimizing the quality that the reader gets and minimizing the bandwidth that the reader is spending if they are on a phone or a tablet on a cell phone connection. With all of the pages uploaded, it's ready. It's time to set up the actual title, and I'll give it a nice little description here. We'll save. You'll notice this little notification that shows up here where it says your pages are missing frames. What that actually means is you have not yet configured the interactive panel-to-panel reading experience, which GlobalComix offers as an optional but recommended improvement for people reading comics in the browser. In order to do this, simply click on the edit button on any of the pages. We're going to start with the first one, and off you go. Here's our interactive editor experience. And you'll notice that we're in the frames section, and here's the page that I uploaded. What I'm showing off here is the high resolution desktop altered version. And you'll notice, if you can through the stream, there's not a lot of pixelation, if any at all. It's actually very crisp and sharp. And all of my pages are actually uploaded, so I'm happy with that. In order to set up the interactive panel-to-panel experience, you can either click on this Add Frame section over here, which I just did, and then kind of just select over the image where you want the panel to be. Or if you want to be a little bit more efficient about it, you can simply press the F button on your keyboard. I'm going to quickly go through and set up the first 1.5 pages. You'll notice here that this panel isn't actually a rectangle, so that's not actually a problem. If you hover the mouse over the line on any point, you can add these points and you can drag the points around. And by adding points, you can actually make odd shapes. I'm going to go ahead and do that quickly for the ones that are sitting up here. I'm going to go and add a couple of points like such. And what I'll do is I'll trace the outline a little bit so that the reading experience kind of properly captures this speech bubble over here. You can go as granular as you want. Go ahead and quickly go through the rest of these. I'm not going to spend much time going through since we are on a time budget here. So we'll point there and we'll point there. Go to the next page, and off we go. Take this point, drag over. Take this point over here, drag over. And I think that's fine. I don't really need to go through and do a lot more. But if I go back to the first page here, you'll see next this little preview button. You might wonder, what does this look like for a reader? And as you're tweaking your panels and the reading experience, you might find yourself going back and forth between preview and edit, making the best possible experience. So let's take a look. So now I'm looking at the desktop view of this, and I can navigate from panel to panel either by clicking with my mouse, scrolling using the scroll wheel, pressing the left or right mouse buttons on my keyboard. And this is the exact view that your readers will have once you publish your comic. It's only accessible to you at this time because you haven't yet published it. So when you're reading it on a desktop or laptop, this is kind of what the experience is like. Right now, I'm kind of just scrolling up and down on my mouse. When you get to the end of the page, it will load in the next page and take you to the next panels. Of course, as a reader, you can optionally choose to turn off this interactive reading experience if that's not for you. To do that, simply click on this interactive node in the top, and you're presented with a legacy viewing experience. This will take us all the way through. Okay, I'm happy with what I've set up here. I'm going to go back into my release edit view. And we'll see here now that 2 of the pages have interactive panels. There's some that are missing, and everything is ready. See, the first 3 pages here are set up as free. That is a result of the choice that we had set when we created the comic, which is to say that it's a paid comic. If you want to alter that at this time, where you could go is to your Manage Comic page in the Advanced section, and you can look at the Licensing tab. Licensing tab lets you choose the free preview mode, as well as configure whether or not your comic should be paid or free by language. In this case, we only have the English language, but if we wanted to, and we had the files for it, we could upload a French, a German, a Japanese, Spanish, whatever language it might be, and you can have as many languages as you want. You can even set certain languages free and certain languages as paid. We're happy with what we have here, so we're going to leave that as is. You'll also notice that there's a lot of different advanced settings for the comic. I'm not going to go too much into detail of what those are. They're pretty self-explanatory, but there's advanced settings on the comic level where you can choose things like publishing year and publishing status, reading direction, etc. Add specific contributors. So if you have advisors or artists or colorists or any of these roles that you want to give credit to on the comic page, you can do that here. And you can also go through and kind of manage multiple languages, but we're going to leave it at this one for now. The final thing that we want to do now is publish the comic. If you have create an account and follow the publisher page that I shared earlier, then one of the things that you should get is an email notification and an on-site notification. I'm going to quickly, before I publish, open up my other browser window here and follow myself so that I can get a nice little notification. I can show what that looks like. So I'm going to log in on my personal. And we're going to go to webinar. And we'll go to the webinar demo publisher. And I'm going to follow this profile over here. Now that I've done that, I can go back in here. And if I were to open my public view, you'll see now I have 4 followers. That's great. Looking at who's here, it's me and Eric and Gamal and a gentleman named Super Sean Arnold. This is exciting. All right. So let's open back up this tab and publish. Let's see what happens. We're presented with a confirmation dialog. It makes you review your title, just make sure everything is set up. The reason it asks you for this is, of course, because we're generating all of these notifications. And we want to make sure that it's presented in the right way. You're also given the choice of a date and time. If you leave the date and time with the default, which is any point of right now when you open this view, it will instantly publish. You can also choose to set the date at any point in the future at a specific time. You might want to do this if you are scheduling your comic release to a specific date and time, say next Friday at 4 p.m. What would happen then is that the comic would automatically publish and be live, and notifications would be sent on your behalf without you actually needing to be in front of the computer. This might coincide with events where you want to have something go out at a specific time point, or simply because you're taking a vacation and you have everything set up and ready to go, and you don't want to have to worry about opening GlobalComix or you're publishing while you're sipping to something nice on the beach. So leave it at right now and go ahead. You get this nice little notification that says it has been published, and let's take a look at what that looks like. So let's open up the comic page. Now we can see that the first chapter is available. And for my other window over here, I have a little notification that says I published the webinar comic. I also received an email notification, but I'm not going to open up my email right now. So as this follower, why don't we see what happens? I'm going to read this comic that I got a little alert for. I can go through and be reading. Okay, we're now on 2nd page. Now we're on the 3rd page, on the 4th page, 5th page, etc. This is great. And what would it look like if you are someone that doesn't have admin access on the platform? So this would be anyone that has an account or doesn't have an account. I'm going to open up a little incognito window and see. So let's presume that I click this link from Twitter or maybe on Reddit, or maybe it was an email announcement or blog post or something like that. It doesn't really matter. It's all web and it's all browser based. So it can come from anywhere. Get this nice little thing, interactive comics. I'll turn that off just to make this faster. Going through page 3. Oh, page 4. You might recall that it said the first 3 pages were free because we didn't configure anyone else additional. This is where my paywall showed up. And if I were to want to continue reading, I need to purchase the reading credits on GlobalComix. Reading credits is a way of accessing digital comics unlike any other platform. You simply purchase a bundle of credits and you spend 1 credit for each page that you read. This means that you can easily and seamlessly try reading new comics without a lot of hurdles to go through, and without having to buy a big batch of pages or big batch of an issue that you might not even like. You can experiment and you can try, as these page credits transfer from comic to comic. At this point, the last thing that I want to show off is the promotion part. So in this case over here, I'm going to create an account, and I'm going to create a new one. We call it demo2. And I'll go through, we'll get this activation link. And there we go. While this is happening in the background, the reason why we created this separate account is because we're going to try out one of our unique tools, which is promotion codes. Promotional codes, I'm sure you're familiar with if you've used the internet in any way, shape, or form on e-commerce platforms. They're ways for platforms or creators or sellers to give promotional access to their products or discounts or so on and so forth. On GlobalComix, a promo code is a code that you can create in order to give away free access to either specific people or large groups of people. It might work particularly well in combination with something like a Comic-Con, an event, a digital event, an announcement, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and create our first little promo code over here. And what we see is a bunch of different settings. There's two types of promo codes that you can create. There's giving away free page credits, or there's time-based access, which would be to say you can give someone 1 day or 1 week or a couple of months, etc., of unlimited reading access to your content. This maximum unique redemptions section is how many people can actually claim your code. So if you're going to a big event and you plan on handing out a lot of different cards or printouts to hundreds of different people, you might want to set this number pretty big. If you're sharing it and you have a big following on social media, well, you can go all the way up to 1 million unique redemptions. In this case, since there's not that many of us in the demonstration, I'm going to go with 25. And we'll say that this code is good for 1 day. This next section, what it means when, by the way, when I say the code is good for 1 day is that after I have redeemed the code, 24 hours later, it will expire. This next section with active and redeemable is when the code is actually relevant. This means that you can create these codes way ahead of schedule and add them to your print materials and all of these things that you might be bringing to events or conventions, etc. And know that the code cannot actually be claimed and used until the specific time that you want it to be. So we'll say that it was good from yesterday at 2 p.m. And this code can no longer be claimed after tomorrow at 2 p.m. And I can either lock this code to a specific comic or all of my comics. Now, if I am a publisher or a creator with multiple different titles, that choice is entirely up to you. For this sake, I'm going to choose only this webinar comic. With the code created over here, you'll see that there's a code here. I'm going to take this code and share with everyone in the chat so that you can claim and test it for yourself. Now I'm going to go ahead and activate this account that I created earlier. The reason I'm doing this is to show off what happens if I try to access the comic without having purchase credits, but I'm actually using the promo code. So I'm going to go back and start reading. As we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And over here, you can claim the access code. The access code was the one that we just created. And I'll put this into claim access code. The way to do that is through credits and your account section. Hooray, success. it expires in 1 day, so to speak. And it's gifted by this publisher for this comic. Over here on the window as a publisher, I can now see that its max uses has been reduced by 1. I can click into the code, and it'll actually give me some information about who created the code and who's actually consumed it. Fantastic. There's one last section that I'm going to show you all, and this is the analytics part. Now, because we just created our comic, there's not a lot of information to actually show you all. So what I'm going to be doing is changing over to a different publisher that has a little bit more readers and a little bit more information so that you can see what's going on. Let's see. So I'm gonna go ahead. This guy. Oh, hang on. It seems like I'm missing something here. Go ahead. Here we go. All right, we're back in the analytics section for our platform demo publishing publisher. This dashboard shows you the overview of the last 30 days. Shows you things like the count of unique readers, how many times those readers have visited your comics, how many pages they've read, and how many panels they have consumed. It'll show you how many people have followed your profile, how many people have favorited your comics, if you've set up forums for your comics, how many people have posted, and how many people have commented on your status updates or the releases. To see more granular, all of these sections are mirrored over here in the left navigation. Let's look at the page reads part. For this demo publisher, what I want to do is go a little bit further timeline than just 1 month. We'll say that we want to look at this on a weekly basis, and we want to look at it for the past year. For this particular publisher, what you can see is when we started becoming active and sharing, the amount of readers has started going up. And you can see kind of the amount of page reads, panel reads, visits, unique readers. You can turn these on and off. So that if you only want to see the amount of unique readers on a weekly basis, you can click these off and you can see it in this way. On the other side, if you only want to see the page reads, then you can click everything else off. One of the things that you might be noticing as I'm doing this is that there's directly a proportional relationship to when people are consuming, or how many people are consuming and how many pages, with a couple of exceptions. What this kind of spike generally means is that people really dug in and read all of the content. In this case, my presumption would be that they're reading a lot fewer pages per person. They're maybe not finishing all of the sample comics that we've uploaded. If I were to scroll a little bit further down, what you can see here is something called acquisition sources. Acquisition sources works in the same way that Google Analytics or any analytics platform for web tracking works. You can understand how many readers are coming in from different channels. Channels being things like Google search. In this case, for the past year, we got 226 people that read 578 pages. I'd also notice that there's a section here that says Google Ads. What this is a platform Google advertisement promotion that we are running and have been running since January. It's going to our Become a Publisher page in GlobalComix. And as a result of those people coming in, those people actually found this particular publisher's demo comics and decided to read, a whole 16 of those people. If I were to run a digital advertisement on Google or on Facebook or on any of these other platforms, I'd be able to see all of that coming in, even to the granularity of which campaign it was that I ran and which piece of content that I shared. think with that, I'm nearing the end of my demo. There's still a lot more that I could go in and look through. But since there's a lot to take in, I'm going to open it up to Q&A in just one moment. One last thing that I want to leave you all with. This releases section here actually is extremely interesting. What you're looking at is the fact that I chose a specific release that has 8 pages. It's under the comic name Bestest Demo, and it's the first chapter. And what you see here is the readership consumption from page 1 through page 8. And you'll notice that there's a lot more readers that are coming in at the start than that are finishing. When you overlay this with graphic novels or comics that have a lot more pages, you can actually start to learn how far into your comic people are consuming before they give up. Maybe you can make some educated understanding on why people are leaving at specific points, if you happen to notice a trend. It also means that you can experiment with what a free preview of your paid comic is. If you have 125 pages graphic novel, maybe you play around and you try the free preview being the first 16 pages, or the first 25, or the first 7. It depends on how far into the story you believe that the reader needs to get before they're hooked and want to continue reading. Okay, at this point, let's open it up to Q&A.
Chris, before you go deep into the Q&A, do you want to spend maybe 2 minutes showing people the revenue section and how they can actually track and collect their revenue if they make their comics paid?
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. Revenue. Going back to your publisher profile on your settings. This revenue section over here has a couple of different settings. We set up the donation monthly goal earlier, and there's 2 different ways that we pay people out. We pay people out by PayPal, which is our international payout method, or if you are in the United States, you can enter your bank account or a credit card. This is handled entirely securely. In fact, we don't store any of that information whatsoever. We use a third-party payment processing provider called Stripe, and Stripe will handle all of the bank information, all of the debit card information if you want to get paid out. When you set up a bank or debit card payout method, when you claim your payouts, which we'll show you how to do in a moment, it is instantly transferred into your account. In fact, you'll see it ready to spend on the next business day. As you are making revenue when people are consuming your paid comics on GlobalComix, your pending income or your revenue is showing up in your pending income. This payouts section has 3 sections: pending, confirmed, and payouts. Pending income is where revenue comes in and sits for the first 14 days. It sits in pending for 14 days as an anti-fraud measure in both ways. It protects readers from publishers or creators who might be trying to abuse the page credit system by having blank pages or too many advertisements or otherwise unrelated or unrelevant content. It protects creators and publishers from getting clawbacks on revenue after they've already been paid out. What that means is if a reader should, for some silly reason, be using fraudulent credit cards and the transaction gets clawed back by the original owner, the pending income will actually disappear. We will also deactivate the accounts on GlobalComix when that happens, and that user will no longer have access to our services. Once revenue moves from pending income into confirmed income, you can claim your payout immediately. You would do that simply by pressing this button. In order to press this button, you will need a minimum of $30 confirmed income and a payout method set, whether it's PayPal or Stripe. And once you accept the payout, it will be on its way and on its way into your account. It's very straightforward, and it's entirely automated, and it's entirely secure. As you start getting revenue coming into GlobalComix, you'll see your history with each of the different payouts and where it was paid out, the sum, how much the payout fee was, the amount, as well as a downloadable invoice with all tax information. This downloadable invoice complies with all the requirements in use for business tax filing and personal tax filing. At the end of the year, if you are using Stripe as your payout method, they will handle your 1099 MISC generations if you are in the US. And you don't need to worry about collecting all of this information yourself and working it through with spreadsheets. Okay, let's see where we are. Let's see, I'm gonna open the Q&A section over here. All right, first question by Mark Stanislawski. He asks, can you publish paid comics but also accept donations? The answer to that is yes, you can do that. And in fact, we might be expanding what donations mean. It might start working a little bit more like a recurring donation / subscription service that would give you free access to paid comics in addition to actually doing donations. Might even have things like early access, etc. TBD on that. All right, the next question is Ben from BG Comics. He says, I missed it. Why are we separating the panels? That's a great question, Ben. Let me show you. It boils down to mobile reading. When you think about webcomics in general, in recent years, what you've learned and seen from other different platforms is the vertical scroll endless reading. That format came around because of phones. Phones are small and traditional comic pages are large. And reading traditional comic pages on your phone is incredibly tedious. It means pinch and zoom and pinch and zoom and pinch and zoom. So some people came up with this vertical scroll. With GlobalComix, we're making that reading experience with traditionally formatted pages very easy on mobile devices. Let me show you. I'm gonna open up my mobile simulator on this particular device here. And you'll notice that it's actually navigating and zooming and taking the reader from panel to panel extremely easily. So all I need to do here is swipe. Just swipe and swipe and swipe and swipe. As opposed to, you know, looking at comics in this way, doing pinching and zooming and pinching and zooming and pinching and zooming, and then I'm done, and then I'll go to the next page, etc. It's a user experience improvement for making things extremely accessible for mobile. Great. Let's see, what's the next question here? Is there a limit to how mature the content can be, R, etc.? There is a limit. What I'd suggest that you do is open globalcomics.com and open the content policy section in the footer. The content policy section has all of the do's and don'ts. The general gist of things is don't embrace sexual violence, don't focus on genitalia without larger context, don't denigrate living beings, don't represent or endorse hate speech, and don't depict minors in sexual manner. More details can be found on this page. I'll actually share this content policy link in the chat for you. There you go. William Govlin says, this looks like a great service. What's the cost model for the publisher? What countries does GC have traction in? Well, so it's entirely free for the publisher. You can take all of your comics, whether it's 100 pages or 100,000 pages, and upload them. And you can publish them. You can even set up paid monetization entirely for free. We have a premium subscription for creators and publishers, which is $20 a month, that comes with some added bells and whistles, such as the in-depth granular analytics, a better revenue share going up to 70% instead of 65%, and various other different quality of life and must-have improvements from a professional publishing perspective. If you are a professional publisher or creator and you expect to be making more than $200 a month, having the premium subscription earns itself. In that the revenue share that you get, the increased, it kind of coalesces at around $200. And so you'd get less money if you didn't have the subscription and you made more than 200 a month. Let's see, what does it say? What countries does GlobalComix have traction in? I'm not really at liberty to go too much into detail as to where all of our readers are. That being said, Europe, North America, and actually in particular Brazil are ones that we're seeing tremendous growth in today. Let's see, Alexander Perez says, how did you figure out to use credits and what's the valuation per page? Well, Alex, that's a really, really great question. I want to answer that in the best possible way. It's a little bit of a lengthy one, so I'm going to do it in two ways. When we did page credits, and we announced that, we put our reasoning in the announcement. So I'm going to share that link in chat, and I'll also quickly go over. There's 3 points. When we made GlobalComix, we wanted to have a monetization structure that works for all kinds of creators. Be that webcomic creators that publish 1 or 2 pages a day, a week, a month, or publishers that publish multiple issues per month or week, or hundreds or even thousands of pages on a yearly basis. With a purchase per chapter basis, the folks that are publishing really small amounts and frequent updates didn't really have a way of purchasing. If the sale would be 50 cents and the transaction fee on that is 40 cents, that doesn't really make much sense. So we wanted to make sure that we could support everyone that publishes comics in a financial way. We also wanted to make the income from publishing predictable. What that means is, in a subscription model that, something like Netflix, it's very hard to know if you spend, say, $100 on marketing, how much of that spend actually yielded a return on the revenue that you made. It also gets offset by how much people consume other people's content. So if everyone is spending a lot of money on marketing, it's even harder to actually get predictable and transparent insights into where your growth and where your revenue is coming from. And the last kind of thing that we were looking at was we wanted to simplify the payment process for readers so that they didn't need to purchase every single chapter all the time, go through this. Do I want to buy this? Do I want to buy this? I haven't heard of the story before. I don't want to try it, etc. We wanted to make it really easy for readers to jump from one comic to another. And if they really like the content, easily continue reading. More details on that you can actually find in this blog post that I shared with y'all. Let's see, what's the next question here? I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. Look at Shannon. Shannon asks, when do payout fees come into place? Payout fees is a transaction fee that is levied on us by our payout providers. It's not one that GlobalComix is actually charging. In Stripe's case, it is $2.25 plus 25% of the amount that is being transferred when we send you your payout. That is entirely on their side. On PayPal's side, it depends a little bit on which country and currency your PayPal is in. If you're in the United States, it's somewhat of a lower percentage. I think it's something like 2.9% plus a small base. And if you are internationally, I think it's something like 4.4% or 4.5%. Again, these are transaction fees levied only by the payout processing providers, not by GlobalComix. We don't actually take any share from payouts. William Duslin says, why is payment share different? My window says 65%, yours says 72%. Well, let me show you. That is because with the premium plan, you go up from 65 to 70%. You might not have a plan set up. So let's take a look. On this demo publisher, you'll see here on subscription, I have created for this one a promo plan. And this professional plan has a revenue share percent of 72%. There are cases where GlobalComix might offer extra signing benefits or incentives for people coming on to GlobalComix. It might be the reward for a contest. It might be a referral bonus. It might be something like that. It's entirely possible to have different revenue share percents on a per publisher or per creator basis. But the two tiers that are standard is if you have no subscription, it says 65%. And if you have a pro subscription, it will say 70% over here. Let's see, we go down to the bottom here. Mark asks, is it mandatory to have interactive panels set up prior to release? No, it is not mandatory. Mark also says, I might have missed it, but how do you set the specific price for your content? You don't actually set a specific price. The paid access is 1 page credit per page. You opt into this platform payment, and it's entirely standardized for everyone that's using paid access. It makes it very easy and predictable for readers to know exactly what they're paying for. Let's see.
If I can hop in and grab one from William.
Go ahead.
William says, regarding page view drop-off, do you recommend cutting up comics into smaller issues, even 8 to 10 pages? That is something that we, are continuing to observe and experiment with. And one of the hopes with analytics is to give you the creative control to decide what's best for your comic and your story. When it comes down to it, different comic readers are going to respond to different things. And there's no clear-cut answer that they definitely do one thing or the other. So, we're definitely hoping that with the insights that you get from analytics, you'll be able to know and test really what your readers are looking for and what's going to engage them the best.
I'll add one more piece to that, which is that for a reader, reading from release 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, even if there's hundreds of pages in each release, is entirely seamless, which means that if you have 4 chapters of 25 pages, you can make it so that the entire first chapter and the first 7 pages of the second chapter are free, and look at your drop-off in that regard also. So it's entirely flexible, and it's up to you as a creator or publisher to find how much of a hook do your readers need before they really want to double down and continue reading. Okay, let's see. Mark asks, when I'm uploading a book, can I use the full book PDF and the system will automatically separate the pages? Yes, why don't I show you that? We'll go into this webinar. I'll go into my comic. I'll create a new release, and I'll take a PDF. And we'll take one of the demos that one of our partner gave us. So this is a digital PDF for Freaks and Gods, published by 215 Inc. You should check out their comic, by the way. Their comics, they're on GlobalComix. I can drag this PDF over here, and what will happen is that it's actually reading the PDF. Oh, here we go. It's reading the PDF, and it's taking each of the pages, converting the pages one by one, and sending high-resolution versions of that to GlobalComix server directly, and it's handling in exactly the same way as when I chose a zip. The only reason I didn't do the demo with a PDF today is because it takes a little bit more time for my browser to convert the PDFs. As you can see, it's going a lot slower. I'm going to go ahead and pause this guy. Where does the donation section set up for readers? That's a good question. There's a pay what you want sort of thing, probably coming in the, I'd say next month, month and a half. And it will show up as part of the, oops, you no longer can access, or you need to pay access for this content. You'll have two choices if the creator is opting for donations. Let's see. Shannon says, digital Kickstarter rewards are usually the whole comic book in PDF form. So the reward is available anytime on the rewardee's own personal computer. Using GlobalComix for Kickstarter rewards seems to limit the reward, or am I missing something? Yes and no. There are people that prefer to have the PDF and are collecting them in that way. And that's entirely fine. But reading the PDF on your phone or on the go, or even having access to it when you're remote, say you're on the train, you might not have a PDF reader, you might not have access to those files. It's always better to have more options than less. And especially as we spend a lot of time commuting, my personal preference is having something that I can access wherever I am. Let's see, Damon Palmer asks, I am a writer and I would like to know if GlobalComix would help people who are only doing one part of the comic making process connect with each other. Oh, that's such a great question. What you're talking about is essentially a form of collaboration connect. It's something that we've been talking about a lot internally with the team. And having a way for creators of different kinds, writers, illustrators, artists, inkers, penners, editors, etc., find each other and be able to work seamlessly, and having like one destination where you know that the people that you find are high quality is something that we're really looking at doing. So all I can say on that is stay tuned. I don't have any timelines, but I do promise you that we've done more than a little bit of exploration, and we have a lot of research going into this at this time. All right, we're at 9:02. I'm going to take two more questions. First one I'm going to take is by Alexander Perez here. He says, how did you figure out to use credits and that valuation per page? The valuation per page on page credits, if I click into this buy credits page, 100 pages for $4.99. So what that actually lets you do is read about 3 to 4 full comics, or 1 to 2 graphic novels-ish, depending on how many pages it is. And we looked at what those prices are elsewhere. And we figured a price that was somewhat comparable to what readers would find on places like Comixology, or if they were buying it as a digital PDF. And then we also looked at, because GlobalComix offers a better revenue share than some place like Comixology, what would a good price be where the readers pay slightly less and the creators and publishers make slightly more than what they would do elsewhere? And thus we landed on the prices that we have. All right, the last question that I'm gonna take here, actually I'm gonna take 2 more. Can readers set it up so they get an email notification too? Yes, absolutely. I have one sitting in my inbox over here, but I'm not going to bring that up since that's my private one. The last question is, will you guys allow the Webp format for images? I don't see why not. As far as that goes, it's a question of demand, really. Supporting new file types, multiple file types, is extremely easy for us because of the way that the platform is built. It's only a question of when is it necessary and when do people feel like that is needed. As it stands right now, the file sizes as a result that we have are actually really good. So like what I mean is, we can take a 50 megabyte high resolution page, single page, and compress it down to about 400K for your mobile device, and it will have no pixelation at all. even using standard JPEG and PNG settings with some optimized tweaks. Okay, let's see. There's one last question here. Will parody comics be allowed? The answer to that is whether or not you legally have the right to publish what you're publishing. If you own the IP or what you are making falls within the bounds of legality, then yes. If you are doing something that you would otherwise get takedown from by people if they found out what you were doing, then no. That's entirely the answer to that. All right, I think we've gone through 23 questions. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm so glad that I was able to show this all off. And I think Eric has a couple of last things to say before we close this out. Why don't you take us away, Eric?
I am muted. Absolutely. I just want to say thank you to everybody. Really active chat. Great to hear all of your questions and comments and thoughts. We just want to share that this is part of a webinar series that we are doing this summer. This was a Q&A that came out of a request during our other webinar, which focuses specifically on digital marketing and more specifically grassroots community marketing on a very low budget. We're going to be actually hosting our second installment of that webinar in August 20th. I'm going to be posting a register link in the chat. And also all of the first session is also available to watch on our digital marketing Facebook group as well as our YouTube channel. I'll be following up an email right after this with all of that information as well, so don't worry about losing any of it. And honestly, just thank you so much. This is like a real thrill to share with you, and we hope to see all of you soon. I put my email in the chat, so feel free to reach out. And other than that, have a wonderful night.
All right, thank you everyone. I'm gonna hop off now. If you have any more questions, feel free to email us like Eric said. We're happy to answer anything that you might have. Have a good night.